Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of The Legal Anchor. To say that the last few days have been very eventful in the maritime space is putting it mildly. On the 23rd of March, one of the largest container vessels operated by a Taiwanese transport company named Evergreen Marine became stranded after it ran aground in the Suez Canal. It is suspected that a gust of wind may have thought to have caused this maritime peril. This peril brought the maritime industry to have almost a standstill as it relates to the Suez Canal. The Suez Canal is one of the vital maritime passageways, with approximately 12% of global trade passing through the Suez Canal. It took almost a week for the Suez Canal to be cleared. It's now a week later, and we're now seeing that the vessel has been removed, and the Suez Canal is now open for business. An investigation is being launched into determine whether this is human error or technical error. At least 367 vessels carrying everything from crude oil to livestock have backed up in maritime traffic, waiting to traverse the Suez Canal. Dozens have taken the long route which goes around the Cape of Good Hope, I should say, area which is in South Africa. So therefore we know that this is going to cost the ship and the ship owners a lot of money in fuel and all other expenses that run as a result of a maritime voyage. Over the weekend, 14 tugboats pulled and pushed the Evergreen at high tide to try and dislodge it, and they were able to move it, as we now know. With this blockage being cleared, consumers and concerned citizens are wondering, what will this mean to them in their pockets? Does this mean that they'll be paying more money? Does this mean that their goods will not come? Does this mean that their goods may arrive damaged? All of these things are now beginning to weigh on the minds of persons as we now see that the blockage has been cleared. But have we gone back to normalcy? To discuss this matter in further detail, I'm joined in studio by Mr. Stephen Anderson and Mr. Courtney Rankin, both students of the Caribbean Maritime University and who are also very keen on the maritime industry. And they approached me, saying to me, what does this mean and all of that? And I said to them, come join me on my show where we can have a nice discussion on it. So join me in studio as we now will be having a nice talk with Mr. Rankin and Mr. Anderson. As promised, I'm here in studio joined by two Caribbean Maritime University students who have approached me and have made it quite clear that they really are interested in this whole Suez Canal issue. So I'm joined by Mr. Stephen Anderson and Mr. Courtney Rankin. Mr. Anderson and Mr. Rankin, your interest now in the maritime industry, I know, starts of course by being students of CMU, and of course naturally you're involved in the maritime sphere. So with that, what are the issues now that you really want to understand? Because this Suez Canal was built so as to accommodate ships to traverse from one part of the world to another. It's a shortcut. Instead of having to go all the way down past the Cape of Good Hope, that's going past South Africa, then all the way down to come back up, they can just cut through there. So it basically links the Mediterranean over with the other side, so the ships can cut through. And we see this blockage that has occurred with the Evergreen now ship, where it is blocked off one part, well, blocked off the entire canal with the ships being stuck in there. What it is exactly that you guys want to really get at now?
Alright, so I must say thank you very much for having me here today.
You're most welcome.
As you know that the Suez Canal contributed to about 12% of world global trade. So for me, one specific question is, what is the wider impact of this event?
Well, the wider impact of this now on the world is that we now see that maritime goods will be running behind schedule. Because as you know, as students, the bill of lading, you remember that ever-present bill of lading. No, this bill of lading would have stated on it when the items were to reach. Now we now know if it's been stuck in the Suez Canal for almost a week, more than likely contractual obligations have not been met, and will probably not be met for some time to come, because there's now going to be a backlog. The ships that are behind are running behind. Equally, what also began happening was we see that other ships automatically just began taking the longer routes, which, as I said, is going past the Cape of Good Hope. So they're putting 5,000 kilometers more onto their journey, which is almost a week more, I believe. And on top of that, it's now going to cost you more fuel. And as you can imagine, having persons on board a vessel costs money. So the running cost of the vessel, having the people, the crew members on board the ship, the food, all of that, and lighting being used, everything is now going to be going up, because it was not budgeted for initially, but now it had to be done. So we see this as being one of the major issues that will now happen. And also an investigation into this whole blockage of the Suez Canal by the ship. It has to be established who is at fault, to understand liability. All of it are going to begin seen, because it's a big maritime incident that has occurred in the world. And having done maritime law, you know, marine insurance, all of that is now going to be playing a pivotal role in this issue as it will be unfolding before our eyes in the next few months. We'll be watching very keenly.
So you made mention of the bill of lading.
Yes.
So with that, with the ships having to deviate, how important will be the deviation clause in this nature?
Excellent. So we know under the Marine Insurance Act that deviation is justified. You have justifiable and unjustifiable deviation. The Marine Insurance Act does not say what is an unjustifiable deviation, where it says what is it gives you that you can deviate if it is to save life or property. So we now know that if this deviation occurred, was it to save life or property? All this has to be looked at, coupled with the contract that would have been drafted with the parties. So the parties now would have had to have understood what were the agreed terms for their deviation. So the contract, it would be pivotal. So each case we will see will turn on its own merit, because what we have to understand is law is dynamic. It's not a one suit fits all. With law, you have to look at it from a multifaceted approach. You have to look at the contract, you have to take in consideration the act, the local legislation, everything. All of those things have to be taken into consideration. So deviation is going to play a major role, and deviation clause will probably play a major role, which many persons, or I should say ship owners, may be relying on. And we will have to also watch keenly as to how this itself unfolds as well.
Alright, so it is very interesting, you know, with the whole shipping aspect and the whole Suez Canal and so forth. But for me and probably the viewers out there, one major question I want to ask here today is, with the now Evergreen Evergreen ship now afloat, how important is salvaging and towage to this aspect?
Okay, so we saw that it said, earlier in our report, it said approximately 13 tugs had to be used to remove this. Now we see that was a salvage going on, a salvage operation, because we're told the salvors went out. And salvors are usually paid for their work and everything. So you have towage and salvage. Towage is where you're just helping to move the ship or the vessel. Let me not say the ship, the vessel, because under maritime law, vessel has a very broad definition. So the vessel is getting assistance to move. That is a towage. A salvage is to prevent a maritime peril or some peril that is about to occur. It goes there to its assistance. This is guided by the Salvage Act, or the Salvage Convention, I should say. And the domestic legislation would be the act. So the various countries would have their acts. And you also see the Towage Convention and the Towage Act. Now, the question is, can you have a towage and a salvage occurring at the same time? No. So it would either be the ship is in a maritime peril or about to get into a peril, and they're going to assist, which would now be a salvage. And then once that is done, and they begin the process of getting it is away from the danger or the maritime peril, as it is said in the maritime industry, it is then moved, and that would be the towage.
Very interesting.
Yes.
So with all that being said, is it very common for vessels to run and grow in canals?
Well, that's a very good question that he asked me. And we have a calling viewer by the name of Captain Rayan Carthers, who I will shift over to right now, and he will answer that question because he has been doing a lot of work at sea, as by the name. He's a research captain who is quite involved and is at sea very often, and he has actually called to weigh in on that. So let's shift over and hear what Captain Carthers has to say on this point.
Thing about being a captain is things are gonna happen.
Yeah.
And you do your best to prevent them. But the most important thing is how you react when they do happen. And that's how he's going to be looking at it, and that's how the company is going to be looking at it. Because it's a Japanese, I think, well, it's a conglomerate, but I believe it's a Japanese company, and but you have ships from all over, trying to get through, and then the canal itself is owned by Egypt. So it's always such a global effort. And it's been blocked before. I keep giggling because I have this story of how it got blocked in 1967 in my head. So in 1967, there were about 15, 16 ships.
You can't use it with a straight face.
I can't. It's so funny to me. But I find a lot of things funny. People say I shouldn't laugh at. But it's about a 12-hour. It's about a 12-hour transit from the northern end in the Mediterranean to the southern end out in the Indian Sea. So on one side, so it runs through what is east, and just on the other side of it is Israel. So these 15 are in and going about their business, tra-la-la-la. And then Israel says, you know what we want? We want war. So they literally start air bombing. Israel starts air bombing Egypt right across the canal. And then Egypt is like, wait, what's going on? Oh, war? Okay, damn. So they fight this war, and like within like a few days, it's over. Israel just like completely whacks them. And Israel pushes their border all the way to what is essentially just the edge of the Suez Canal. So now this canal is bordered, which used to run right through Egypt, is now bordered by Egypt and Israel, I guess, as a spoil of war. And Israel said, all right, bet, watch this. So no, Egypt said, all right, watch this. Egypt now, just through like the sheer, this is like the best example of bad man I've ever seen. They lost the war, so they blew up a bunch of ships at both ends of the canal.
What?
Yeah, they're like, all right, watch this. They blew up a bunch of ships at both ends of the canal and blocked it. They put mines in there. I mean, like lots of mines, all kinds of like full maritime artillery, bombed everything, and then so the crews of those 15, 16 ships were like, guys, we're in here, and we're talking about ships from Germany, ships from England, ships from France, ships from Poland, ships from Czechoslovakia, Czech Republic, I guess, ships from Bulgaria, and they're all in there like twiddling their thumbs. So it's blocked. They can't move. Egypt says, all right, have that. And Israel says, whatever, we don't care. So everyone just kind of leaves it. So the companies, all the different companies of the different ships say, okay, well, these are still perfectly good ships. We're gonna try and wait it out. So they scale back their crew and left like a skeleton crew on there just to like take care of the ships and stuff. And Time passes, time passes, time passes, nothing happens. So they have to start they have to start rotating the crews. So they start rotating out like 10-man crews, 12-man crews every 6 months. And before you know it, years have passed. And before you know it, years have passed, and they're just there living, and 6 months at a time. So they started doing, just I guess cope with life. They started having like movie nights. They started doing like, these are all the different ships.
So they're
with all the different
full-fledged
crews.
living there and just having a grand time now for free,
Yeah,
literally.
yeah, they're just there. Like every 6 months, you get a new crew, and they're just like, I guess we just live here for 6 months now. and Israel is just like, whatever, we don't care. Egypt is like, that's on you. And
So what happens to the
so
cargo?
it was just there. Like everything was just there here in the States, and a lot of shipping, cargo shipping and supplies and stuff for the States comes through the Pacific anyway. But there's definitely good chunk of the that is really affected by this, and probably none more so than the companies that are dependent on the revenue from this cargo. But
Yeah.
like we said, insurance will cover all of that. As long as we keep everyone safe. That's the most important thing to me. Like whenever I'm going out to sea, like my job is just like, one, bring everyone back, and to get the data, get the mission done smoothly, have a good time, take care of everyone. But like, my number one priority is bringing people back.
Captain Carothers, thank you very much for that very detailed insight on the Suez Canal, and also on how the maritime industry is being affected by this blockage. So with that said, I would like to thank my guests who I have here in studio with me. I hope you enjoyed it.
It was a very insightful overview.
It was a very great experience.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. And to my viewers, thank you once again for tuning in to this. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank the sponsor, one of my sponsors who has sponsored the beginning of this. You will see that we have his emblem at the front of it. Capture the notion behind the motion. Thank you very much for making my new intro. I hope you all enjoyed it, and I would just like to thank everybody once again for tuning into my show. So guys, don't forget to
subscribe, like, share, and leave a comment.